if we really want to start at the very beginning, it's rather than say budgeting, it's understanding what are you spending on? And we can break that spending into kind of two categories. Your fixed expenses, meaning those things, your rent or your mortgage payment,
Mm.
your food, your utilities. I mean, some of them have a little bit of variation, but you have to eat. You have to heat your house, you have to cool your house, those things. So those are kind of your fixed expenses. And then we have your variable expenses. Those are the ones that you have a lot more flexibility to change.
Mm-hmm.
Vacations, eating out, entertainment, if you belong to the gym, those type of things. So
Yep.
we want to make sure we have a good idea what those are. And then we just want to kind of compare those to what are your inflows? How much money are you making from your job? Or is your spouse making? Or if you're later in life and you're getting Social Security or retirement money, whatever it is, how much money is coming in? And we would like to make sure that the inflows are greater than the outflows.
Yep.
And as long as that's the case, then we're in really good shape. And so then if we want to think about too in that context, like I think about 50, 30, 20. And what I mean by that is 50% is going to go to those things, those more of those fixed expenses, the things that you have to do.
Yeah.
Then you've got 30%, that's kind of your wants and the things that would be nice to do. And then 20%, that's going to go to savings or debt pay down, depending upon where you are in life. And if we think about it that way, it becomes a lot easier, at least to me, because now we kind of took these broad concepts and have some guidelines on the financial side.
Hi, it's Tiffany Lorraine Galloway with another episode of the Resilient Mother podcast. Today I have a guest talking about resilience. So some people may have followed this, but about, 4 months ago around November, my computer crashed. Great time for it to crash only because Black Friday sales. But what I didn't realize is some episodes got lost in that computer when it crashed. This is one of those episodes. So we are re-recording it because it's on a computer that is no longer functioning. So thank you, Phil, for coming back and being willing to talk with us again. Now, this gentleman here, we're going to be talking about resilience when it comes to your finances. And I think that is a very important thing for moms to understand and not just leave in the hands of somebody else. And that is something I want to empower in other women, especially because I was taken advantage of myself for not being financially educated and just expected to have someone else take care of it. And it's so empowering, whether you are in charge of the finances, you share the finances, or you just decide who has the strength in the relationship or in your life. It creates independence, it creates freedom. And it also just gives you a perspective that money is a tool, not something some people have just happen to be lucky enough to gather in their life. That it's not just about wealth. It's about a legacy. It's about thriving in your life at the lifestyle that you're comfortable with. And so those are some of the places we'll probably go today. Phil, again, thank you for being here. Please tell us a little about you and why you chose to join us again.
Well, thanks for having me back, so to speak.
Yeah.
I enjoyed our first conversation, so I was more than happy to come back and talk to you again. As far as me, I started my career in public accounting. I worked for Deloitte and the tax department. Decided I didn't want to do taxes as my main thing anymore. I was specializing in international corporate taxes, and that kind of gets to be a bit much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had been writing for the Motley Fool back when they had like these online portfolios, and I found out about the CFA and said, that's my ticket out of the tax department. I'm going to do that. So I went and got my CFA. While I was doing that, I was a writer for T. Rowe Price, and then I became an analyst, and I was covering oil and gas stocks. And then from there, I decided to leave, and I went to work for another financial advisor. It wasn't the best fit. And ultimately, I like to tell people in my more cynical moments that I got tired of working for idiots. So I decided to be the idiot. and I started my own firm. And so I started Apprise. Technically, it was 2017, middle of 2017, but really it wasn't until middle of 2018 that I made this my full-time thing.
Wow. Okay, guys. So if some of that went completely over your head, that is okay. I took some finance and business classes, so I know what some of those terms are. You may not. But the point is, we have an expert here, okay? And an entrepreneur as well. and successful at it. And that matters. That gives some credentials for the story. But what I love is the heart of your story and why you got into finances, because it wasn't just because you were good at numbers. There's heart to this story. If you can share some of that part of it.
I'd be happy to. So growing up in my house, it was the typical model that we're used to. You know, my dad took care of the finances. My mom was responsible for my sister and I. But here's the thing. My father, he wasn't good at it. Mm-hmm. We had unpaid bills. We had services turned off. There was no savings. I remember when I got my driver's license, going down to the local utility to pay the bills so that things could come back on. When it was time for me to go to college, I was told, go anywhere you want. So I wanted to be a doctor. And I was a pre-med, and I went to Duke, and I was a psychology major there. And I did a lot to stay in school. I had to speak to the president of the university. I got them to do extra things. But at the end of my junior year, I owed the money, and we agreed that I needed to pay what I owed before I could finish. I was 6 courses from graduating.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I left school. I came back home, and it was really a toxic situation. So I moved across the country. I moved to Tucson, and I was there for a year and a half, and I was ready to go back to school. Duke doesn't have undergraduate accounting degrees, and that's what I decided I wanted to do. My grades were good, but they weren't good enough. And I was like, I'm going to be a psych major, and what am I going to do with that? Like, it just doesn't make sense because it's going to be more school, and I really can't afford that. So I applied to University of Arizona. I applied to Rutgers. I thought I'd get a better job out of Rutgers. I actually had state residency in both places, Arizona because I was there, and Rutgers because of my parents. So I came back and I went to Rutgers. I got my accounting degree. And I will tell you that it was not simple. I still didn't have all the money I needed. Ever get those credit card checks in the mail? Sometimes I use those to pay for rent. Wow. Sometimes I use those to pay for tuition, whatever. And it was not the best, but it was what I needed to do. I considered it good debt. I remember the year ended, and I saw how much I paid in interest on my credit cards. I'm like, oh my God, I don't make enough to pay that. So I put in a place to pay it all off. I used the snowball, I guess it is, where I started with the biggest one and paid that off. Like I started with the highest interest rate and paid that off, not necessarily the biggest amount, the highest interest rate. And I worked until I got them all done. I did it faster than I expected. I was also living at home while all this was going on. And one day I came home and I opened the mail, or I got the mail, and I looked, and there were credit card bills. They had my name on it. But here's the thing, they weren't mine. I found out, like I got proof because I got a copy of one of the applications. My father forged my name to open up credit card accounts because he couldn't get credit on his own. I confronted him about it. I called the companies to ask them to tell him what happened. They're like, well, he's paying. It's okay. So we're just going to take him out of your name, put him in his and whatever. I'm like, okay. I just made sure those balances were paid. And then my mother, while I was away, had gone back to school herself. And she did that and became an occupational therapist and started her own business. And I know she did that to put herself in position to be able to be on her own. But unfortunately, not long after she started her business, she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's when we found out how bad the financial situation had gotten at home. And my mom asked me to help. My parents, while my mother was going through this, they had to sell their house and move. They had so many debts. I did what I could. I took care of her medical bills and all that kind of stuff. And I did what I could, but unfortunately, my mom didn't make it. She passed away a year and a half after her diagnosis. Her breast cancer metastasized to her brain. So now I consider the work that I do as trying to help other women not have to have those experiences that my mom did, to help keep that from happening. And as part of my other credentials, besides like being a CPA and a CFA, which is a chartered financial analyst, I'm also a registered life planner. And registered life planning, it's an experiential kind of training. So you create your own life plan. So when I created my life plan, the first element of my life plan is to create a scholarship for women who go back to school later in life the way my mom did. And
bless you as one of those. Thank you.
And I've started to put some money away for that. I don't have as much as I want. Like went to her school, back to the school she was at. I went to the professional organization. I didn't like how they wanted to do things, so I'm going to do it on my own. So I've started to put some money away. When I have enough, that's when I'll start it. But I have already put some money away. Eventually, I'd love to tie it to a percentage of the firm's revenues, but I got to get there. But that's really, it's all motivated by the things that my mom went through and trying to help keep it. There's two types of role models we can have in this world. There's good ones and bad ones. I had a really bad one when it came to finances. But here's the thing. I really learned a lot because I learned everything not to do.
Right. And that's where we have to be grateful for anyone who crosses our path, because we get to choose that lesson. And if we're going to apply it for the better for ourselves. And I think too, you can take two kids in the same situation and they would turn out totally different. So maybe there's someone else would turn out the complete opposite and just continue the pattern.
That's right.
We always have a choice. We always have the ability. And I think that's part of resilience, is realizing you have a choice to make things better. You always have the ability to control yourself and what you do in this present moment. Everything else, honestly, you don't have control of. You can't go fix the past. You can't predict the future. You just have what you're going to do today. And I love how you talked about snowballing your debt. When I got divorced, some of the best advice I was given was from Dave Ramsey saying, women in divorce, the biggest mistake that they make is trying to hold onto the house they cannot afford. Take the equity and rebuild your life. And you were building your life in a way, but you got this debt, but you had to have it in order to get the education to get where you wanted to be. And today, that promise is almost not there in the same way that it used to be. But I've been thinking about this because I was raised with this mentality that I believe is a money block, that only some people can make it. Only some people who go into that debt, only some people who pay for that higher education make the money. So why go that route was kind of a mentality I was given. And this is coming from, Podunk, Montana, where you hopefully were a sports enthusiast and got some scholarship, or you went in the Army or the military or the Air Force. Thank you for that. But those seem like the path out of Montana, right? Instead of it being, no, that's an investment. Because technically, let's say it takes you get $30,000 of debt to get a degree. This changed my perspective when I read this in an article. Rich people think, okay, go learn how to make that and pay for your schooling, because you should be working on a degree that will get you that when you get out. But you need to learn what it takes to make that. Instead of, why would you want to go into this debt? Why would you want to make that investment in yourself? Mm-hmm. But you have to, in order to level up, to get into the right networks, the right circles, the right education, to have that stable income. You have to kind of prove yourself. And the other way people are doing that now is through skill set, but it's still if you're making the revenue. I mean, that's the thing. You don't have a business until you have cash flow. Not really. And that's why most businesses fail within 1 to 2 years. And I've learned that with my own online business and some failures and identity theft and different things that I've had to literally shut down my LLC this year. So I'm like, okay, I know what not to do next time. But I think it's so important for moms to have this idea of a life plan. Like the people I've come across in personal development, the amount of intention they have with who they have in their inner circle and how they map out their life has just been such a blessing to see, because that's how you manifest things. It's not just this, oh, life happened to me. Oh, I'm a victim of my life. Oh, I did the best I could. Oh, well, I tried, or I'm just this way. I can't change. Not true at all. That's the beautiful thing about the human spirit and resilience, is we have the ability to change things. We really do. It doesn't matter what we face. And so if you were going to, I'm curious, Mel Abraham, a friend of mine, has a book out, The Money Machine, How to Build Your Money Machine. And he starts the book out with the same concept of, what is the goal? What is the big picture first? What are your numbers first? And then figure out how you're going to get to that goal. Now, that's overwhelming for some people who think, I need like $2 million, $3 million in retirement. And how in the world am I okay, numbers, it's numbers, but people are doing it every day. People are doing this. And so if you can break it down, and then your weekly, your monthly goals, then you at least know what to strive for to at least attempt to get there. And now the reason you want someone who's like more certified and educated like you, that you can trust, that's at the person's best interest, not a firm's interest, not at selling you something, your interest in your life plan, is because you're going to know the different tools and vehicles to get someone there that you may not know yourself. And so I think it's a combination of self-education, but it's also being honest with yourself about what's the lifestyle I'm comfortable at. And that's going to look different for every single person. So there's not one vehicle that there's not one get rich quick or one solution. My goals and where I live and when I retire is going to be completely different than yours, completely different than somebody else's. I'm a single mom with 3 kids. I have different things I have to think about than someone else who's married and has a husband who's got maybe retirement started and a pension. Heck, I've got to start a retirement here. So I have to take a more aggressive course of action for those things. So when you see a mom or you see someone that maybe hasn't been as proactive as I've kind of been forced to, because I had bankruptcy for 10 years. I had things that have taught me how to get to this point, and I've been motivated to get to this point. But someone who's like hearing all this and just been like, okay, well, that's great. I hear this all the time. I should take control of my finances, or I should have this life plan, but I find it too overwhelming. I'm curious what the first couple of questions are that you ask them to settle them into this mindset and to these concepts, especially from a mother's point of view. Like, as you said, your heart started with your mom and her situation.
So there's 2 parts to that question. So if I'm just working on your life plan, there's a process that I follow. It's an acronym. It's called EVOKE. And that first E is exploration, which is really, why are you here? Why did you come to me? What made you decide that now is the time? And honestly, when I do these meetings like that, I don't talk a lot, because I'm here to listen. I'm here to help you figure things out, because as you said, we all have our own plan.
Yeah. Mine
and yours are different. Even mine and my wife's, there's spots that they overlap, but there's also spots that they're different. So it's an individualized process. So we want to start there. And then there are some questions that I ask as we go through the life planning process. And so the next meeting, that V is vision. And so we ask 3 questions. The first question is pretty easy. Imagine that money was no object. What would you do? How would you live your life? Dream big. Think of all these things that you want to do.
Love that.
Then it starts to get harder. Now we get to the second question. This time, you go to the doctor and you get the unfortunate news that you have 5 to 10 years left to live. The good news is you're not ever going to feel sick. The bad news is you don't know when you're going to go. Money is now part of the equation. So now it's, what would you do? How would you live your life? And what would you change? And then the third question is the really hard one. This time you go to the doctor and you get the unfortunate news. Today's the day.
Wow.
Now it's not what would you do? Although some people try to answer it that way. It's what did you not get to do? And who did you not get to be? And so some people think this is all about regret. It's not at all about regret. It's about identifying those things that are the most important things to you. Let's make sure that you get to do them so that you don't get to that point where your life ends and you feel regret because you didn't get to do them. And so now we want to I say that we have a team of resources. It's more than just money. And team is another acronym. So it's time, energy, attention, and money. We want to take all those things and align them with how we use our money or how we use our capital, so that the things that are most important to us, we want to prioritize those and make sure that we can do them. If things go really well, some other things we can do, but the most important ones, if we want to live our best lives, we want to be able to do those things that matter the most to us. And then after we take that and we create a vision around it of what you want to do, and it's, we can do this multiple times, right? So it's going to be within the next, usually 6 to 18 months. Sometimes it could be a little shorter. Sometimes it could be a little bit longer. But we create a vision of something of these things that you want to do, to start to kind of light your torch, so to speak, right? To get you excited. And then that O is obstacles. So now it's, what could possibly get in the way? And then what can you do about that? How can you do that? Who can help? And when?
That is
do it.
Like a key part of personal development that I missed until the last couple of years. You plan for challenges. You plan for obstacles. You don't just get surprised by them.
Yes.
Which I think is how a lot of people approach things. I make this goal and then an obstacle comes. Oh, never mind. I'll pick a different goal. Like, we're about that time in the year here when we're recording February. Like, how are those New Year's resolutions going, right? But if you knew it was going to be a challenge, if you knew you were going to have obstacles, you're probably still going. So it's that kind of concept. That's
right. And then we take that from there, and now that's where the knowledge that I have as an advisor helps you to implement, and then you go out and execute and live your life. So that's the first part of your question. The second part you asked on the financial side. So if we really want to start at the very beginning, it's rather than say budgeting, it's understanding what are you spending on? And we can break that spending into kind of two categories. Your fixed expenses, meaning those things, your rent or your mortgage payment, your food, your utilities. I mean, some of them have a little bit of variation, but you have to eat. You have to heat your house. You have to cool your house, those things. So those are kind of your fixed expenses. And then we have your variable expenses. Those are the ones that you have a lot more flexibility to change. Vacations, eating out, entertainment, if you belong to the gym, those type of things. So we want to make sure we have a good idea what those are. And then we just want to kind of compare those to what are your inflows? How much money are you making from your job? Or is your spouse making? Or if you're later in life and you're getting Social Security or retirement money, whatever it is, how much money is coming in? And we would like to make sure that the inflows are greater than the outflows. And as long as that's the case, then we're in really good shape. And so then if we want to think about two in that context, like I think about 50, 30, 20. And what I mean by that is 50% is going to go to those things, those fixed expenses, the things that you have to do. Then you've got 30%, that's kind of your wants and the things that would be nice to do. And then 20%, that's going to go to savings or debt pay down, depending upon where you are in life. And if we think about it that way, it becomes a lot easier, at least to me, because now we kind of took these broad concepts and have some guidelines on the financial side. But having that life plan really helps to identify where some of that, like that 30% and that 20% is going to go.
Well, I think it's so important because that's your motivation. It's like that bucket list of like, if I do this, like back in 2022, good year for me, my kids and I kept saving for Disney. And I kept saying, okay, well, we're not going to eat out because we're saving for Disney, or we're not going to do this because we're saving for Disney. And we did a trip on a budget. I think some people think I had a lot, but I really didn't. I worked there and I just knew how to work things, and I got deals because they were just opening back up. And so what looked like a really elaborate vacation was actually just really smart planning. But that family effort together, that it was our money, that we were doing something with it, brought a lot of harmony in our house and what we were motivated to do and what we weren't doing. And, you can use that for Christmas is coming up, and, are you on Santa's good list or night list? I mean, with kids, it's different versus adults. I love what you said about your wife's goals, and yours may be different, but there are things that align as well. And I think that's important because I think a lot of moms can get lost in, I'm taking care of everyone. It's about their dreams. It's about his dreams. And like, that is true to a point. I think to be in a loving family relationship, you are supporting each other, but that doesn't mean mom doesn't have goals or dreams. And the more that I look at moms who are aspiring to things, their children follow. So whatever level you level up to, they'll follow. But if you don't, you can't be the one sitting there going, yeah, you should go pursue your dreams. And then they turn around and go, but mommy, why aren't you? Yeah. Or you need to be financially responsible. And then, but mommy, you're not, you spent money on this. Like, they see everything that we are doing.
Yes, they do.
And so it's important as mom. I think the heart of the home is mom. And it's just a role. And some women are the ones in charge of money. Like sometimes it's flip and vice versa. And we've definitely got more variations of household and blended families. And we've got all sorts of things now than the traditional way things were. But if there was a mom sitting here listening to this, like wanting to get on board, what would you say to her?
And I guess I'd first start with just trying to understand, what do you have? Right. And like, it's so even before we get to like the inflows and outflows, like understanding what is it that you have. Just a few weeks ago, my wife said to me, let's have a financial meeting. So we sat down and I went through the accounts that we have. So she knew, like, she wanted to update what she had. So she knows where we sit. I mean, and honestly, that's what allowed me to start the business when I did. I started a business from zero. I had no clients when I started my business. Wow. And, people say, I tried to mentor some people and they're asking, so how was it when you started? I'm like, well, year one sucked. Yeah. Year two wasn't much better. And then year three came, and that's when I knew that I had a business. Yeah. And actually at the beginning of year three, that's when my wife said to me, this is it. If it doesn't happen this year, you have to go back to work for somebody else. But the fact that we had savings and she knew that that gave her the comfort to let me have a try to do this, because she knew that even though, like you said, when you went to Disney and you did things at a more of a bargain kind of rate, well, we still did some things, but we did the same thing. We cut back, right?
Yeah.
But we had enough that we could live in a way that allowed us to have some fun and do some things together, but yet also cut back. And I like the best part of that is it also taught my kids, we have 4 kids, it taught them the value. They saw the value of saving because they know that the savings is what got us through. And like, I'll tell you, one of my sons, he works for Amazon Web Services now. And when he first started, like a month after his job, I looked at his account because I manage it, right? And I see he funded his Roth IRA for the year. And I just looked at that and said, I did something right.
Yeah.
And I was listened to.
Yeah. I've got one kid on board with that. She's like, okay, I work from 16 to 18. I'm going to make a ton of money, throw it in a Roth IRA and forget about it. And I'll have money to retire. And I'm like, yay, somebody learned something I wish I'd known.
Yeah. He was funny. He doesn't live, he's in Seattle right now and I'm on the East Coast. He's trying to come back, but he was home a few weeks ago and we were someplace and I was telling him about some stuff that I want him to do financially. And I said, someday I'm not going to be here. And you're going to remember me because of all these things that are going to let you retire early or let you do all these things that you want to do. I won't be here, but you'll thank me because of those lessons that we teach them.
Yeah.
But to get back to it, like the key thing is don't just let your spouse do it.
Yeah.
Right. You have to be involved. You have to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I've seen situations where women going through divorce, when you have credit, there should be cards in your name and in your spouse's name. Don't just have them all be joint because you have to have your own credit, right?
Yeah.
But I had a couple that she had a credit card, but he paid all the bills. And when things got tough, he didn't pay hers. So she wanted to move out and she couldn't get a lease because they look at your credit when you're trying to rent. It's not just when you buy that they look at your credit. Fortunately, she had some family that could step in and help her out. But without that, she wouldn't have been able to move out because she had no credit because he purposely destroyed her credit.
Well, and that's just it. That's financial abuse. And I think what some people don't realize is that actually quantifies as domestic abuse. Financial abuse is domestic abuse.
Sure.
It can be a dad saying, oh, we're going to go get ice cream and then saying, no, we're not because now you just did something. But the mom doesn't have access to the funds, so she can't fulfill the promise. That is also abuse. There's all sorts of forms of it. So you're absolutely right. I don't think it's a healthy relationship if you can't sit down and look at the finances together. And that is stressful for a lot of people, I will say. And in my last marriage, I actually really tried to get a financial advisor on board in the beginning. And my ex, unfortunately, was just too overwhelmed by the whole idea. And I found out later why, but I'm not going to get into that here. But it would have set us up for success because later that really became a problem that only one of us really knew what the numbers were, knew how to pay the bills correctly. Because I got ill at one point and all of a sudden we were behind on stuff and that wasn't okay. Luckily I caught it in time, but it was also really hard for me because I had a newborn. I'm like needing rest for a couple months and I'm not really fully able to get it the way that I need to mentally and emotionally from a little bit of a harder birth and stuff that needed just so things stayed the way that they were. But had we, and it's not like we didn't explore those things that we hadn't like gone over the budget, but like when it came to goals, I had got a completely different idea than he did. And I think we still today don't know what those were because we couldn't really openly talk about them because it just became this like stress, money, can't talk about it, shut down for one of us. And so it just became this point that where you couldn't communicate about it. And it doesn't have to be that way because it should be exciting. It should be about your goals and your dreams and that next vacation and that lifestyle you're going to have when you retire. Like you don't get those things if you don't talk about the day-to-day finances, if you don't talk about the budgeting and those kind of things. And I'll say too, being in the dating world now, it's really hard to find a divorced guy who's not financially messed up because somebody got too emotional in the divorce process. The first thing I tell women to do when they know they're going to divorce is to do a separation agreement, because that will hold legally. And especially if you have kids, who's spending what time with who while you are separated before you decide to completely divorce. But the minute you can get a hold of the credit cards, just like you were saying, get the finances clean. split the cards, pay off all the debt so that nobody in a moment of anger or stupidity ruins both of your credit. And then you're both with a mess. Nobody can take care of the kids. And you both end up in situations you don't want to be in. Because it's not always just because one person does it. If it starts to go back and forth and like this person maxes out this card and this, like, I mean, it gets ugly. I am so blessed that it wasn't that way and it was pretty straightforward. And I would say having an attorney is really helpful as well. But it's to guide you. But even so, like if you had a plan, you had a prenup. I'm totally all about a prenup now. Like then there's a plan already in place because people just don't seem to have the commitment that they did in relationships anymore. And too many people are using credit like it's savings. Credit is not savings. Even if you pay off the balance every month and you're not incurring the interest, the minute you can't, it's not like I lost a job and I have savings for 6 months to live off of. I lost a job and now I have 6 more months of debt on me. And I think that's the thing people aren't quite understanding. And I will say, you know, the housing market doesn't help. Like it's almost 50% of some people's paycheck right now. And even that's been interesting moving, but I had to get my kids out of a bad situation. So what's the pro or con there? But it means adjustments in other areas. It just absolutely does. And it's totally possible. I mean, we find deals like where it's a kids eat free thing. Well, I've got a teenager and me, that's 2 adult meals. That means the 2 other kids are free. So I can afford to go. I was actually telling this to somebody yesterday. I'm like, yeah, so I can eat at this restaurant for $20 if I do it right. And they're like, what? Family for $20? I'm like, yeah, it's possible. It's totally possible. But you have to think about, okay, how do I do the deal? And but like, not quite the coupon thing. We don't quite have coupons anymore, but there are a lot of deals online. Or some of the other tricks that I learned from my family is thrift stores are the best. They are absolutely the best. And as a mom with kids that are constantly changing shoe sizes and like that saves me a ton. Or hand-me-downs or the stores where you bring the kids' clothes in and out. That's one way that I do it. Also buying things off season. So I'm going to buy winter stuff in the summer and I'm going to buy summer stuff in the winter because that's when they're trying to get rid of it. And right. So that's, and I will, you know, that worked except for when my girls were both the same size. I would say that no, it was interesting, but we're past that now. So you know, most of these things work. I will say there are a few exceptions, but there are a lot of tricks. And those are like mine just from like hard knocks in life. Like I know there's so much more in the financial realm that you know about in tools. And we talked about something like a Roth IRA, or I now have a high yield savings account. I know how CDs work. I know how all sorts of things work that I just thought were out of my reach. I was kind of taught they were only for the wealthy. And now I'm like, no, that's how the wealthy got wealthy. It's not that it was just not for me. It was, I got to get my hands in there. I got to get in the game. And things like the stock market, you got to be in for 10 years to see a return. You can't go in the first year and think you're going to get a return. And I won't do crypto. I know some people like crypto, but I'm like, I won't. It's too unpredictable for me. But it's your comfort and your level of risk. And I think the thing I've also learned from Mel and from other financial people is diversity is key. If you have all your money in your house, that's a problem. If something happens to real estate, that's a problem. If you have all your money in CDs, let's say, or all your money in one pot, you have to diversify. And I think that just goes for your budget and everything that you do is just look for the options, the diversity, the opportunities, and you can find them. You just got to be willing to look or maybe ask for help or try something a little different. But you can certainly break the family patterns and be a chain breaker. I think you are, Phil, and I'm all for that too. The next generation is going to be better after me. And that's what I'm doing. And that's what this podcast is about. Moms being more resilient to build the next resilient generation. So any last thoughts? And then tell us where people can find you if they want to work with you.
Sure. So I guess just following up on what you said, I mean, the other thing to think about, you talked about diversity, and like that's something really important when you think about divorce. So you take the house, right? Do you want to be house poor? There's, because if you take your value from the divorce in the house, what else do you have? And can you really afford that? You really need to think about that. That's part of having diversification. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with saying I'd like a smaller house so that my expenses are lower.
And I think some moms think, and I get this, my kids lost their home, but my kids are going to lose their home. My kids are going to lose their backyard. They're going to lose that playhouse their dad built them. And I went and really lived humbly the last 5 years in an area I did not intend to be in. I actually was going to turn it into a rental. It ended up being my home thanks to COVID and other circumstances. It was very humbling. And I was even in food lines and different things. But I've also seen kids who the parents don't divorce. that they wish the parents had sooner. And I've also seen the moms who lost the home over trying to keep it. And I've noticed that the kids who the mom struggled, maybe she went through a few relationships, or maybe it took a while to settle, or she made those sacrifices. Those kids are actually better off because they understand what it is they're not spoiled in one sense, but they've also seen that you can overcome these things and how to be smart and what the value of smart and hard work is in planning these things. I think it's the emotional attachment to the home that I think moms struggle with the most. Home is where you are.
Yes.
And with my kids, we've had 4 or 5 different homes at this point. Home is where mom is, where we are together and the time that we spend together. The rest of it, maybe I'll finally get a home and settle at some point. But until then, home's where I am and when we're together. And that is enough. And I think moms need to hear that. That is enough, that you can be, as long as you have it together, you're not really stressed out. You're able to keep a routine. You're able to be in a generally safe area. Then it can be enough.
It can. And then the other thing that's really important to think about is you want your kids to have a good life. Mm-hmm. And a good life doesn't have to be living in that fancy home. Good life is being able to laugh, to have fun, to do things. And isn't it worth the trade-off to get that, to move, to get to that other place where you can do more of that, as opposed to really struggling to say, I mean, look, you can learn from watching somebody struggle, but there's lots you can also learn from watching people sometimes make sacrifices, sometimes do things that they might not want to do, but that are really best. I mean, it's about resilience. It's about just doing the right things to survive and to, like, when you're a mom, like you said, that's where that's home. And it's also really important to them to take care of their kids. Yeah. You want to do that in the best way possible. And sometimes it means you have to do things that you might not want to do, but in the end, that's what's going to make everybody the happiest.
Yeah. And I'll say the new place that we're in is really nice, in a really nice area with really great schools, but it took almost 6 years to get here, and schooling and budgeting and sacrifices. And they were absolutely worth it, 100%.
Well, congratulations. I mean, that's great that you did that.
Now the next set of goals, the big visit. But yeah, closer than I was before. But it took time and patience, and just that understanding that it was going to take time. It was going to take those sacrifices. And yeah, it hurt a little bit sometimes when you had this picture of what your life was, or you realize your kids didn't have the things that they had, like lessons before or different things. But in the end, I want them to be happy, successful adults, and we'll do as much as we can along the way. But what's been interesting too is when my kids really want something, they'll teach it to themselves. I have a daughter who taught herself the piano. I have a daughter who just got a scholarship for learning violin because she's been learning just by ear since August and caught on without knowing anything because she wanted it. And she realized she could get it because she sees mom doing that. And then I've got a son who's 4 who taught himself piano watching his sister, of all things. And he just got a scholarship to be in a junior musicianship thing up at the university here. Like, blessings come in other ways. And I really feel like God especially will make up the difference if you're putting your heart in the right place and you're putting the right things first. And it doesn't have to be keep up with the Joneses. It doesn't have to be the big show that's on Instagram. That's the highlight reel. Those aren't the things the kids are going to remember. Those aren't the things that are going to last as your fond memories. It's going to be that pillow fight with mom on the bed because we were having a fun day together. It was going to be eating at the restaurant every week because we found a way to make it work to go out and enjoy each other and get out of the house. It's going to be these lessons that someone was so kind to give a scholarship for and to realize that there was someone in need there for that. It's those things that it all works out. It's all meant to be for our good. But if we are too fixated on what we think has to be instead of what could be, we can get in our own way.
We can. And you talk about those experiences and everything else. Like, I look at it, my kids are older, right? Mm-hmm. Like 2 of them have graduated college. And for a long time, from when they were little, right after we got married, my father-in-law took my wife and me and some others on trips. And I loved how they all came together and joined. I said, that's something we need to do because I want, when our kids get older, they still want to do that. So like, we went on a trip last summer together We went on a trip in January together. And every time we finish one of those trips, they're still like, when's the next one?
Yeah.
And the one that has the girlfriend is like, and when does she get included?
Yeah.
And like, I know there's a cost, right? But it's still music to my ears,
Yes.
because it means that if you ever look at the graphs and it talks about like when you get where you get to spend your time with different people, right?
Mhm.
And with your kids, it's really so much of it is through high school.
Yeah.
And then they go to college. And so now they're gone during college. And then maybe you see them breaks, maybe you don't. And then they move out. And so like these type of things, to me, they like change the look of that a little bit, because now we get to spend a little bit more time with our kids than the average parent does once their kids are on their own. And I think that's really important, because, and having like the things that you do as a family really make a difference. And that's what allows those things to happen, because there's plenty of people in families that doesn't happen.
Yeah. And so I would say, don't take advice from anyone who isn't living the life you want to live.
Yeah.
So here's an example of somebody figured out their adult kids want to do things with them. I'm all for that. You know, here's someone I do want to follow versus someone who has the big house and has everything, and the kids have moved across country and they never see each other,
Yeah.
or don't even talk to each other or whatnot, because you're focused on the wrong things, and that the time is precious. And when you're divorced and you have like shared custody or 50-50 custody, it even cuts that time in half that you have with your kids. And so it's even more important to realize how important this time is and to manage it wisely instead of focusing on goals that aren't that important right now versus being available to your kids. And I will sacrifice all day long to get as much time as I can with my kids. And not everyone understands that, because they think somehow other things are going to solve more problems for me. And they don't understand all the intricate complications of that, cost of childcare or different things that, you know, I've done my path the way I have for a reason. Would I have liked to done a little bit more or something different? Sure. But that wasn't the best choice for my family and our situation and our goals. And God has given me the opportunities that I have, and I've cherished them. I relish them, and I'll just make the most of what I have. And I don't judge somebody. Don't, that is just the worst thing. We don't need mom shame.
No.
Your kids are healthy, they're happy. Your teenagers say they don't like you. That's just part of being a teenager. You're doing your job. But like, if your kids are healthy, happy, they have a roof over their head, they have food in their tummy, like you're interested in them, you ask them about their day every day. It's those teeny tiny things, being available to have that talk in the car or sing in the car, as we like to. Those are the things I remember. All my kids screaming, like doing Lady Gaga at the top of their lungs in the car. You know, those are the things I'm going to remember. I'll never want to get in the car, you know, that kind of thing, versus the big house where everybody had their own room and we're on electronics and nobody saw each other. Like, so, you know.
Just a simple example. So one of my sons is in college and he had a dentist appointment today that was near home. He came home. I got a hug.
Yay!
Right? Like, I mean, you know, he stopped home. We talked for a little bit. I got a hug. And that's really nice that he didn't have to come home.
Yeah, you didn't ask. Yeah.
No, I didn't say a word to him. He just decided to come home and say hello before he went back to school. It's really nice.
Yeah. We could probably do a whole nother podcast on how you did all of that, actually. Parenting tips. I think we all need some of that today. Thank you for this conversation. We're over time here a little bit, but where can people find you if they want to work with you because they have goals that align with this, that they want this lifestyle for themselves, and to maybe break this down so it's not so overwhelming?
Sure. So my firm is Apprise Wealth Management. And so you can go to my website, which is Apprise Wealth, APPRISEWEALTH.com. And if you go there, you can schedule a call with me by going to the contact page. You can sign up for my blog. I blog every week. If you go to apprisewealth.com/ebook, I have an ebook for I call it Women Facing New Beginnings, How to Flourish Through Life's Big Changes. And I also have an assessment that's related to life planning. If you go to apprisewealth.com/assessment, you can take that. It takes like 2 or 3 minutes to take it and just get yourself an idea where you stand in terms of your life plan and your finances.
Yeah. And then you have a way to communicate it. And I think that's just the key, is having the language to communicate what you want and then having someone help you get the right tools in place.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on again and having just another wonderful conversation. Maybe we'll have you back on again for another conversation on resilient motherhood.
I'd be happy to come back. And thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed our conversation last time and this time.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for being here, audience, and we'll see you next time on the Resilient Mother podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe so we can share this message. We are a worldwide podcast with guests all around the world, and we want to continue to grow this community. You can find us on socials. You could also be a guest. Look for that link below if you'd be interested in being a guest on the podcast. If you know a sponsor or would like to be a sponsor, please reach out to me or Catherine as well.
Sure. We want you all on this journey. We want to hear your stories. We want to share your stories. We want to gain strength from each other because together we're stronger. And to never forget the blessing of being a mother and what we're creating. We're creating the future every single day of our lives. So get on this train with us and let's do this thing, moms.
I believe in you. Believe in yourself. God bless. And we'll see you around. Take care.